this enlightenment factor or X factor, that going back and reverse engineering what's taking place and where it's taking place is, I think it's probably extraordinarily difficult. It's probably
Yeah.
like getting a master to think about like when they're a baby. I think it's that far apart. Like, firstly, that I mean, it's sort of like concepts have a dual nature, right? On the one hand, concepts being completely attached and identified to the world of concepts put you in a world where it's like you're devoid of what the concept itself is pointing to. So the concept, in a sense, is blocking you. It's in the way. And yet, paradoxically, that exact concept, without that exact concept, you wouldn't know where you are. You wouldn't know the map. You wouldn't even know part of the territory. And the concept itself is at least somewhat useful for getting you to the next part of
like if you
your journey.
if you didn't have any concepts, think about how disorientating it would be to live your life, right? So there's still some need for concepts in our life just to be able to see and walk through reality.
Documentary. Tonight's the night. Dylan makes a change.
You're trying to conceptualize this experience or conceptualize this knowledge and give it to somebody else, but really you're only giving one small piece of the puzzle. And then you also have people coming from different backgrounds with different existing patterns. Be aware of that limitation of the person, the human that is talking to you through the words of this limited, mind and body.
Yeah, very beautifully said. And I would agree. Like, it's a huge blessing that through the internet we have access to so many teachers, but it's also a curse at the same time because there's so many conflicting viewpoints, and it's easy to get confused along this thing. But at the end of the day, like, you already know everything. It's all within. So sometimes it takes a teacher to point that out. Sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, agreed. Like, they're all human. Everybody's human at the end of the day, and everybody's experience and path looks different.
In a field of or branch of philosophy called epistemology, there is a concept called rationalism, and there is a concept called empiricism. And the people called rationalists, they believe in some sense we are innately entangled with rationality. So, for example, you don't need to necessarily teach someone that 1 + 1 = 2. You're not really teaching it. In this point of view, you are confirming what they already know, because there's an innate sense in which we sort of know logical abstracts and their formulations. Whereas the empiricist has a different approach. The empiricist thinks everything that we learn basically through either the external world sort of conditioning our mind towards it, or our experience of that thing. So one metaphor that I have for the process of awakening itself is what you want to do is you want to take this thing called rationalism, which is basically the equivalent to conceptualism, and you want to use it, and you want to empty yourself of it. And it's sort of like when you're an empiricist, there's this external world, and this social conditioning is all coming at you, and the stimulus from evolutionary biology and all the colors and everything external. And that's similar to rationalism in a sense. And you want to sort of process it. And as you're processing it, it sort of flows out of your system. And all that's left is this emptiness, and the emptiness of experience itself. So you want to take yourself from mind and you want to take yourself into experience. And so in spiritual terminology or spiritual language, this would be the metaphor that I just used would be similar to basically dissolving the ego or dissolving the egoic identity, and all that's left is reality itself. And that's what I think is a metaphor for empiricism, because a true form of empiricism is this direct experience that you have with reality itself. And I think Frank Yang often defines enlightenment not in terms of like the ending of suffering or a process of awakening or something, but seeing and perceiving, as you said earlier, the truth, like continuously.
Concepts don't do anything to me anymore. Stuff of the mind, vanish. All the sensations, they liberate themselves the moment it arises. It's the moment it disappears.
Must be hard to hear a little bit.
I remember when I first started, I did the wrong thing, bro. I went to this product, I think back in the day it was called The Blueprint. And The Blueprint had like 5 DVDs, and it had 5 hours on each DVD. And I watched all of it. And I was like a few years younger than you are now, I believe, but it absolutely collapsed my mind. But it also filled me up with so many different ideas, and they all seem contradictory, and they all seem like you can't place them anywhere because you have no relevant bearing of experience to attach the idea to years and years and years of practice and succession to where you are at now. But later on, now that I'm 15 years after that point and I do have some relevant experiences, all of the theory makes sense and it can all be harmonized, but it cannot really be logically harmonized. You can try to, and sometimes you're successful, but there's still a little bit of paradoxes. But in terms of experience, it all makes sense. Now, that's my best metaphor for what I think could be something like enlightenment. We're going to be told a whole bunch of conflicting information, contradictory notions, but somewhere inside this void of theory, the more you grow, the more you put pieces of the different puzzle together and the theory together. But yeah, what's your thoughts on something like that?
Yeah, I like what you said. It's kind of about deciding or realizing what's authentic to you. And ultimately, everything we're talking about is a concept, it's a label. Angelo talks about this a lot in his videos, how even the idea of the no self is a concept. Even the idea of
Yes,
an awakening is a concept. Time is a concept. And so when you listen to advice, when you hear other people's stories, it can be very easy to see them for what more than what they are, which is concepts and labels and ideas and theories, just like what we're presenting now. However, the caveat I would add here is just because it's a concept doesn't mean it's not useful to necessarily learn about it. I think do both. The key is to have a certain knowing about this is a concept, this is an idea, and not have that attachment to it. And I think if you can do that, it can actually be quite beneficial to learn information and read and figure things out. But ultimately, that all needs to be transcended as well. But in my personal experience, there has been benefit from understanding and learning things. And then later on, when you finally arrive at a certain place or realization in your life, you can start to attach it to the theory. It starts to make sense, as you said in your story later on, 15 years down the track. You know, a lot of those ideas and those DVDs start to make sense to you. And so as you go along the path, things are going to make more and more sense to you in micro ways. So at the end of the day, it's about realizing that this path is a unique path for you. And so it's about finding what's the most authentic. People are guides. We're here to point. Everybody's pointing in different directions. Some people point better than other people. I think it's easy to think we're looking in the direction the guide is pointing, the teacher is pointing to. But really we're looking at a slightly different direction. Because even the pointers themselves can be confusing. After all, the pointers are language, writing, any way of conveying information. And so I think it's important to transcend the pointers, and I think authenticity comes into play here. Because we're all wired differently. Pursue what's most authentic to you as an individual. I think the path of authenticity and following your intuition whilst you practice will lead you to the desired outcome. But once again, don't trust anything I'm saying here. After all, this is just another pointer, another voice, another person sharing the information, sharing what they've learned.
That's why I like documenting my journey though, because I don't really feel like a teacher of any of these things, so to speak, but it's like through documenting the pitfalls that I go through or experiences that I have or whatever it may be, like hopefully that can help somebody see that, you know, if Frank documents and I document and other people document, that everybody's journey is just so radically different. Certain realizations are come to at different times, and there's no right or wrong way to walk down this path, so to speak. Like it's all unfolding as it's unfolding, and that's perfect. You don't have to meditate for 2 hours a day for 7 years to get enlightenment. Thank you. Some people do it without meditating at all, but it's just different. So I guess embracing, the individuality, the fact that there is not one singular path.
It took me 5 years to get my first session, and it took my name from the net, my girlfriend, my group, like a couple months of like 10 minutes a day practice. Everybody, due to wiring, whatever, you know, karma, different pace. So I suspect, you know, most people will be in the middle of the delta. So I don't know. It's a debate. Session or last session. It's always getting before I used to try so hard to get, can I get a session to confirm my team? So stupid.